What's up, everybody? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick, and I have an album review for you, and another one that I would say is highly anticipated amongst its fans since it has been 6 years since this band's last album. Today, we are going to go over the latest offering from Teitanblood, from the Visceral Abyss. This comes out on the 28th of March on Norma Evangelium Diaboli Records. This band formed in 2003 in Spain. This is their fourth full-length overall, though they also have 3 EPs and I believe 2 splits. I got into this band, I believe, with either Seven Chalices or Woven Black Arteries. I can't remember which one. I just remembered picking up a Teitanblood album and going, oh my god, this is absolutely insanely heavy. And not just like sonically heavy. Believe me, this band has that totally covered, but just oppressively dark, evil heavy. Their album Death is a particular favorite of mine, and again, it has been 6 years since their last album, The Baneful Choir, which honestly last year I started thinking about this band more and was like, you know what, it has been a minute since these guys unleashed a hellish, tormented, dark, twisted album. And for those that don't know, this is blackened death metal, I suppose arguably war metal, I don't know. That whole subset is just very indistinct a lot of the time. I just think it's really heavy blackened death metal, but I'm sure to some this is war metal. I don't know, really doesn't matter. Baseline, this band is like the soundtrack to the apocalypse as it's actually happening. Their sound is brutal, chaotic, dark, menacing as hell, and once again they have achieved that. And honestly, I think this one might be even heavier than The Baneful Choir, which was damn heavy, much like all of their stuff. The album kicks off with Enter the Hypogeum with some ambience and creepy noises like mutterings and demonic chattering in the background, and then it builds into this muffled, droning, heavy tremolo, and then you get some drums that come in and just blast off. It takes off into just absolutely chaotic, twisted, violent death metal / blackened death metal. This band sounds just insanely creepy. Atmosphere aplenty. Transitional atmosphere between every track, also peppered all throughout the songs. You have massive, dark, sinister riffs and dissonant melodies, dive bomb littered solos, and I think one of the key factors in terms of making this album sound as chaotic and dark and menacing as possible are the vocals. They sound absolutely maniacal, they're cavernous, they're ghoulish, and honestly, they sound like they swirl around this maelstrom of music. The cadences feel very random at times, but honestly, it feels like they kind of just swirl around the music, like they're just like this haze or miasma that hangs out around this dense, almost impenetrable fucking death metal sound. Predominantly death metal, I think. Like, black metal is definitely a big part of this. I would say it's used more in terms of like the atmosphere, and the vocals might lean a little bit more on black metal. But when it comes down to the punishing brutality that is on here, I would say it is mostly death metal. And fiercely old school death metal at times. The songs Strangling Visions as well as And Darkness Was All. There are sections of like galloping D beats, more like straight up like, I guess you could say like late 80s, early 90s death metal, where it's just like primal, nasty chugging, like, you know, a little bit of thrash is still kind of like left in their death metal sound. But those alternate between like these just violent blast beat fits and just chaotic solos and just this dense, just ugly, evil fucking atmosphere. I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, as soon as you played this album or dropped the needle on it, you all of a sudden started smelling the scent of brimstone in the air. It might have happened for me. Who knows? This album might have just like scared a fart out of me. That kind of worked with the atmosphere too. Baseline, I think this band is very comparable to bands like Ascended Dead, Mitochondrion, Triumvirfell, you know, like just very dense, apocalyptic sounding death metal. But there's also a lot of nuance in how they kind of like shift around in the songs. There's a lot of clever dynamics going on when you get past the fact that this was probably written to conjure up the devil and get him in the fucking mosh pit. The guitar work in here I think is awesome. Like, primally, it kind of just goes after this like just heavy, droning, very dissonant, kind of like just evil static sound, but there are a lot of cool riffy transitions that happen that kind of catch you off guard. Alternating between like death metal tremolos and black metal tremolos, you get the high gainy ones. The production here is dense as hell and the guitars feel very forward, but you can make out everything pretty damn clearly on here. And my God, the drum performance on here is exhausting. Frequent turnovers, tons of blast beats. Like, this is a blasty as shit album. But they're wise about breaking it up a little bit, giving their drummer a little bit of a break, and just peppering in like moments of groove, some good solid builds. The last track, Tomb Corpse Harrowspecs in particular, I mean, that might be my big standout, and it's probably because it's a giant, like almost 15-minute evil as shit track. But there's a good long build up. You get some tribal patterns, some more like groovy pockets, and then that builds into the absolutely chaotic, violent drum work on here. Like, this dude sounds like he is trying to hammer his snare right into the fucking center of the planet. That song in particular, though, does showcase a lot of their dynamics. It's one of those, like, this song kind of represents everything that the band does well in one track. You have some more, like, droning, doom-laden riffs, the heavier, just like death metal tremolos, blackened sections. You even have some moments on there that are definitely very thrashy as well. It also counts the leads too. While the leads on here are generally like the very just like chaotic dive bomb riddled atonal squawky ones, they mostly just contribute to the chaotic atmosphere in here. There's some legit like good melodic leads on here. Sepulchral, Carrion God, and Strangling Visions. All of a sudden you get some more like tuneful leads on there. They feel like they're like plucked out of like a classic 1990s death metal album. It doesn't go too overboard on the melody. It still sounds dark and sinister. It still complements the song, but it is noticeably more melodic. While it's not necessarily the lead on the song, the title track makes good use of like some really solid dissonant melodies, and dissonance is aplenty on here. Everything on here sounds a little bit shrill and kind of dirty sounding, and a lot of the riffs, you know, while they are, I wouldn't say like totally atonal, there's just like sort of a menacing kind of dark, you know, kind of dissonant presence to them. But they make good use of dissonant melodies, especially towards the end of the song. There's a really haunting like black metal section on there that just generates a really solid hook. Actually, all throughout that song, there's some really solid lead melodies that, again, complement the atmosphere and give it just like a little bit of a melodic break, which melody isn't the biggest thing on here. A lot of this is just about sounding as evil as possible, and mission accomplished once again. But I like the fact that the pacing on this album, they introduce some different elements as the album goes on, so none of this really got stale. Yeah, it's a total blast beat fest, and tons of like, you know, tremolos and, you know, a lot of the stuff you expect from this band and probably expect from war metal in general, if this is in fact war metal. But rarely did this get monotonous. While the songs are definitely longer, I do think, you know, they're pretty well paced. There are some sections where I feel like, you know, they kind of like revisit a riff and like, all right, we've kind of done this one and we did it for a long time before. I feel like we can move on. I know there's plenty in this band's wheelhouse. But for the most part, I was really enthralled by this, and I really like the fact that there's a good clear break between the material on side A versus side B. You are greeted to an interlude, which I believe would probably kick off side B on your tape or vinyl if you went that route. 700 Dogs from Hell. It's short, it's creepy, it's a good little break between the tracks to get the next one going. It's pretty much Teitanblood's way of saying, hey, welcome to side B, here's your demonic rabid hell pig. Don't feed it after midnight or we'll murder your entire family. But that leads into Strangling Visions, which has like, again, like some slightly different elements to it that really didn't show up very much on the first half. This is where a lot of like the old school death metal flavors come in, and it's just a little bit more like straightforward riffy, but it's still with their like token atmosphere. And again, the transitions going from these galloping D beats and like more just hefty chugs to the just dissonant maelstrom of chaos that they generate all throughout this album, I think really kind of made this song stand out. And I like the fact that that song also carries immediately into And Darkness Was All. It's almost one continuous track, and it continues along with the riff barrage that, you know, Strangling Visions had. Most tracks in here are separated by some, like, again, like twisted, dark, ambient sort of atmosphere before the riffs kick off. But even without that, I think this album would flow really well because each song kind of does stand out a bit. And while this is punishing and evil as shit, it is not bereft of melody too. I really like the fact that there's some really solid melodic hooks that show up, especially the last track, Tomb Corpse Horospex. It might be my favorite, and I love the fact that it has this slow, labored buildup. There's some more atmospheric guitars that kick it off, and again, you have that background hum of just like muffled evil. Again, it kind of just sounds like satanic chatter and mumbling, and you know, later on in the song you have like chanting choirs that move to the front of the mix a little bit more. There's like ghosts coughing and wheezing, and I don't know what entirely is going on. It sounds like it was recorded like literally right outside of the gates of hell. Like they put a boom mic up there, like, let's see what we can get. Oh shit, that's terrifying. And it's 100% going on the album. But this song has a really good labored build. I want to say like the first like 3 minutes of this is a slow build up into like, you know, the faster, heavier stuff, but it sets the atmosphere really well. The dissonant melodies, it sounds dark and haunting, almost more doom-laden. And then after that, it is an absolute riff storm for, I would say, about like 2/3 of the song. The first 2/3 of this song is just aggressive, nasty, biting, snarling. Lots of cool riff changes too. There's some different drum patterns that show up on there. You get some good gallops, of course, tons of blast beats. But as the song goes on, you kind of notice a mood shift. Like it becomes notably more sinister rather than brutal, and as it peters out, the guitars, you know, going from like the squawky dive bombs start to sound like moaning ghostly wails. They become more of a like an atmospheric thing. This is where the chants come in, and they're kind of muffled, like just to the point where you can't really make out what they're saying. My guess, it's something creepy and probably in Latin, but you also get like, I wouldn't call it like full-on orchestral swells, but there's definitely something that sounds like, you know, like a big swell of synths and maybe some horns, like, I don't know, the horns of the fucking apocalypse, because that would totally fit with this. But the song kind of lays on this drawn-out atmospheric end, and I do feel like it kind of goes on a little bit long. Like, I want to say it's, you know, almost 3 minutes of the song is this atmospheric end. But it does some kind of cool stuff in there. Like, as the song's kind of like petering out and kind of relying on this apocalyptic atmosphere, there's a quote or a sample that comes in, and I swear it sounds like Werner Herzog. And it might very well be. Like, it sounds like he's talking about, I don't know, something Werner Herzog would talk about. You know, probably something deep and esoteric and existential, and I don't know. I just like the way he says things, because he's just got this very creepy German voice. But it almost becomes kind of like a cinematic score towards the end, and there might have been a bit of like a cinematic score from whatever thing they pulled that from. But as much as I didn't like the drawn out atmospheric section, you know, being so long, it does cap off the album really well. As far as any negatives on here, I do feel like a couple of songs do drone on certain parts too long, but I was vested in this the entire time. Like, this album keeps its cloven hoof on your throat pretty much the entire listen. It's suffocating. It surrounds you in just pure darkness, and I love it. Pretty much across the board, I just flat out dig this album. I dig this band anyway, but I think the 6-year slumber has not dulled anything in this band whatsoever. So overall, I'm going to give this 4 stars, bordering on a 4.5. I've only had 2 listens, and believe me, that was a lot to take in. But if you're a giant Teitanblood fan, you're gonna love this. This is vicious, unrelenting, it's punishing as hell. It feels so goddamn evil, but at the same time, it doesn't rely solely on just the atmosphere and all that to just make it sound evil and dark. It's evil with riffs. The songwriting, despite being brutal as hell, is very dynamic. The drum work in here is absolutely nuts. I hope that dude survived this. The production is perfect for what they were going for. It generates a sense of unease at pretty much all times, especially with the vocals kind of just swirling about the mix. That was one of the things that I really think contributed the most to the atmosphere. The vocal performance in here, it's just maniacal shrieking and tortured howls and the perfect amount of reverb to make it sound like they recorded this in a cave that, you know, was like a back door to hell. If you're a big fan of, again, like Mitochondrion, Mithras, Triumvir Foul, Ascended Dead, maybe like a little bit of Void Ceremony, and maybe just a little bit of Portal too, check this album out. One of the heaviest things I've listened to this year. I've already said that once or twice this year, but again, the ante keeps getting upped with every week, it seems. So if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We also have memberships. They're only 99 cents, and our lone perk is doing a members-only stream, which we will probably doing one sometime later in April, and generally we just kind of sit around and chit-chat, but who knows, we might do a themed one. Anyway, memberships are the main way to support the channel now. We also still have our store, thrallsmetal.com, with our t-shirts and hats. That is linked down below. And of course, if you'd like to become a member of this channel and pledge your allegiance to Thralls, and I mean, you know, Satan too. We talk a little bit. There's a join button down there. You should hit it, or don't. But, you know, maybe. I'm really not good at selling this. But either way, thank you guys for like literally all the support over the years. Tons of content coming out. We're eventually going to get down to the At the Gates ranking. I'm still kind of going through that and also catching up on shit I bought. Probably don't need to tell you collection updates are incoming. But yeah, it is still 100% amazing doing this. We love the shit out of it, and we are looking forward to just overloading you guys with more content. So one more big thank you, because you guys are awesome, and we will catch you later.